The injury to Dayo Odeyingbo makes it critical that the Chicago Bears now get aggressive at the NFL trade deadline because all of a sudden, it's not just about this year.
You are Locked On Bears, your daily Chicago Bears podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
This is Locked On Bears, and I'm your host, Lauren Cox. I'm here to bring you your daily, in-depth Chicago Bears news and analysis. You can follow me on Twitter at CoxSports1, and you can follow the podcast at Locked On Bears on TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, and the Locked On Bears YouTube channel, where you can keep up with all of our video podcasts as well. Thanks for making Locked On Bears your first listen today. We're part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new customers can bet just $5, and if your bet wins, you'll get $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. On the show today, I want to look at the Bears' different options at the trade deadline. Some different names to keep an eye on there as Ryan Poles looks to potentially upgrade the defensive line following the injury to Dayo Odeyingbo, and why this is not just about making the team better this year, but really planning for the long term here and maybe trying to find somebody that can be more than just a half a season boost, but somebody who can play a bigger role going forward into the long-term future. We'll look at some of the more expensive options that I think are nice big names, but might be more than the Bears are willing to give up at this stage of the process. There's also some smaller names you'll hear about that might not move the needle that much, but might be better than nothing. And a few guys that I think fit in that sweet spot of like, yeah, maybe right price, right fit, right time could be maybe the more preferred options there. And I'll say on the front end, recording a podcast around a trade deadline is a very dangerous game because there's a good likelihood that, by the time you listen to this podcast, one or more of these players will have already been traded, or maybe even the Bears will have made a trade at the moment they do this. I mean, when I recorded a podcast last week about saying the Bears needed to add a cornerback, they signed C.J. Gardner-Johnson like an hour before this podcast came out. So I already felt late, and I feel like the same thing's going to happen. Like Tuesday morning, they're going to make some move, and then there's going to be another, 27 minutes of this podcast talking about other moves that, aren't going to be made. But we trudge on nonetheless. And a quick programming note, I'm going to be off the rest of the week and the beginning of next week. Joe George is going to be filling in for me. So you're still going to have Locked On Bears all 5 days this week, all 5 days next week. Just not going to be me all 5 days. But Joe will get you covered. We'll have crossover Thursday with Locked On Giants and get you ready for the next Bears game. But I want to get you ready for the NFL trade deadline because this Dayo Odeyingbo injury changes everything. It changes the urgency and the timeline, the timescape that Ryan Poles and the Chicago Bears are working from here. Because generally, I went into this NFL trade deadline thinking the Bears probably aren't going to be that aggressive because this is not the season or the team right now to, mortgage the future and go all in, right? To make that big move to put you over the top and say, hey, we're pushing for the Super Bowl right now. Like this year is not the Bears' Super Bowl year. So I kind of felt like any move you make at the deadline is going to be more like lower end, cheaper kind of deal stuff. You trade a 6th round pick for that player and a 7th round pick, like a swap, and you add a rotational player, but not like necessarily a bona fide, cut and dry starter. But then Dayo Odeyingbo goes down against the Cincinnati Bengals. And even at first, it's like, okay, let's see what's going on here. But once the news comes out that not only is he out for the season, but it's a torn Achilles, all of a sudden the math changes for me at the trade deadline. Because first of all, right, you do not have a starting caliber defensive end opposite Montez Sweat. There's just a hole there. Because Dominique Robinson is injured. He would probably be next man up there, but he is not a starting caliber NFL defensive end. You cannot be very successful if he is your top pass rush option in the starting lineup. Or I suppose you could play Austin Booker, but he's still getting into game shape, and also he's a 5th round pick last year. Like he is not, as much as he had that great sack against the Bengals, he is not yet a starting caliber every down NFL edge rusher. And maybe they say, trial by fire, will live and die by the ups and downs of the young guys. But I think the pressure and the urgency becomes greater by the specifics of the injury, the Achilles injury at the beginning of November. I am not a doctor, and I try not to try and get too deep into medical stuff when it comes to player injuries on here. But like Achilles injuries are supposed to be like one of the hardest and longest to recover from. And I think given where we are in the NFL season, even if this was a 9-month recovery from Dayo Odeyingbo, which I think is usually what they say for ACL tears, 9 months from now would be August. See if we go, December, January, February, March, April, May, June, July, like August-ish would be like a fast timeline before he would return to action. And even then, like it could be, I mean, we don't know. It could be 10, 11, sometimes it's a 12-month process for an Achilles recovery. Like this is, especially for a large human being like Dayo Odeyingbo, who has a lot of weight, and you need that Achilles to bend the edge, right? It's kind of critical to the position. This could disrupt Dayo Odeyingbo's 2026 season. Maybe he's ready to go week 1. Maybe he's not. But if he is ready to go week 1, like he's not going to be mid-season form there. He's going to miss OTAs, minicamp, and likely most or not, if not all of training camp. So like he's not going to be whatever full, like he might be able to play potentially by week 1 next year. I don't think he will be full strength, full speed, full go, maximum Dayo Odeyingbo. And so we start to look like bigger picture here, right? If Odeyingbo is underwhelming this year and not living up to the contract the Bears signed him to, and then comes back next year, either misses the beginning of the season or is ready for week 1, but not full speed week 1, he's not going to be his best self at that point. Like we're probably not going to see some big season for Dayo Odeyingbo in year 2. And so then he'll be entering the 3rd year of an expensive contract where maybe he hasn't played well in either of the first 2 seasons. And then at that point, I mean, I realize we're like hypothetically down the line a lot right now, but like, I mean, this could be kind of the nail in the coffin of him being a free agent bust. Like he was performing like the early stages of a free agent bust now. Then you add in the injury that could impact his 2nd season. And it's like, you now potentially need a new long-term starter opposite Montez Sweat. And you don't necessarily have to find that at the trade deadline right now, but you need a short-term starter too. Like you need a starter for right now, and you might, maybe even most likely will need a new long-term starter. So if you need to trade for a short-term starter right now anyway, why not make it a guy that can be more of a long-term option? If you're going to have to give up draft picks to get a player, like why do a rental when you could get your hands on somebody to be a part of this defensive line, for the long term? And it becomes tricky because, the better young players are going to cost more draft picks and it costs more salary cap space that you don't really have at this point. So there's some real limitations in this process, but I just think it makes the importance of this trade deadline and this move all the more higher because of the significance of Dayo Odeyingbo's injury. So I want to go through some of the different options that are rumored or reported or speculated to be out there and available for the Bears, and who the better fits might be and who the lesser fits might be, next on Locked On Bears. The Locked On Bears podcast is brought to you by our friends at BILT. Nobody likes paying rent, but if you have to, you might as well get something for it. That's where BILT comes in. BILT is changing the game by turning your rent payment into real rewards you can actually use. Because when you pay your rent through BILT, you earn flexible points that can be redeemed towards hundreds of hotels and airlines, or a future rent payment, your next Lyft ride, and more. But BILT isn't just about rent. It's about rewarding you around your entire neighborhood. It's the payments you're already making. You're just earning points on the thing you were doing already. It just helps make everyday life feel more rewarding. So turn your rent into rewards and start earning points around your neighborhood by going to joinbilt.com/LockedOnNFL. That's JOINBILT. joinbilt.com/LockedOnNFL. And make sure to use that link so they know we sent you. So the Bears have a real hole at defensive end. A hole for right now, for sure. Potentially that hole could be a longer term one if you're thinking bigger picture here. I can certainly understand the perspective of Ryan Poles, and I'm sure a lot of Bears fans out there saying, okay, well, yeah, but you don't have to get your long-term guy here, right? If you can get a cheap option to get you to the end of the season, you have the upcoming NFL draft, you have upcoming free agency. Yeah, you don't necessarily have to have your long-term solution here, but if it two birds, one stone, sure. You know, that you kind of got to see what the trade market's going to take you. And there are a lot of pass rushing names getting thrown around there. We've already seen Jalen Phillips get traded from the Dolphins to the Philadelphia Eagles. We've seen Dre'Mont Jones traded from the Titans to the Baltimore Ravens. And I think those are two moves that Bears fans are sitting there saying, hey, why didn't we make that move? I think Bears fans want to see Ryan Poles make a move like that. I personally like the Dre'Mont Jones one makes a lot more sense to me than the Jalen Phillips one from a Bears perspective. Dre'Mont Jones was a free agent. The Bears were in a bidding war a couple years ago, but he's a big, oversized edge rusher, like perfect fit for what Dennis Allen prefers. He can play inside and out. He's on a 1 year, like $6 or $8 million deal with the Titans. They're trading him midseason because they fired their coach and they're kind of in the tank anyway. Obviously, it makes sense for Baltimore because they're trying to bolster their pass rush and go win. But it took like a 5th round pick. I think the one area it's like, okay, do the Bears even want to give up that much for a 1 year player? Like Dre'Mont Jones is going to be a free agent this offseason. Probably not going to get some long-term deal from the Ravens. And I suppose the Bears could have traded for him and then considered whether they would want to give him a longer-term contract at that point. He is 28, will turn 29 in January, so he's not old, but right in the prime of his career. So I would have kicked the tires on Dre'Mont Jones for that kind of draft capital. Jalen Phillips goes from the Dolphins to the Eagles. That's a much more risky gamble by Philadelphia there. They gave up a 3rd round pick to get him. I know he's a young ascending player that they feel like could be a part of their longer term plans at the edge rusher position there because he's 26, coming up on the end of his rookie contract. But he has been injured a lot, especially the last couple seasons. And I feel like I remember he might have been injured in college and maybe quote unquote, I think if I remember right, he medically retired in college, then came back and played and had a couple of huge seasons early in his Dolphins career. But then the last 2 seasons, he's been on injured reserve and missed big chunks of time. I don't like trading for injury prone players, especially giving him a 3rd round pick, even though he's young and has a lot of upside. I'm more okay with Ryan Poles sitting that one out, just given the risk level that's involved there. And I have a feeling we're not going to see him go huge, go big, right? Like everyone always points to, Trey Hendrickson, all right? And the reports are that, the Bengals are now more willing to listen to offers than they had been at any point, leading up to this moment. Though we just saw Trey Hendrickson is injured, didn't play against the Chicago Bears on Sunday. So do you trade for a player you already know is injured and he's been dealing with this hip thing the last couple of weeks and hasn't had a sack since the beginning of October? Perhaps in some part due to injury. I mean, we know he's a great player, and I'm not trying to say he's like some bad player now because he's hurt, but he's 30 years old. He's dealing with injuries, and he's going to cost. The Bengals are asking for a minimum of a 1st round pick, and then you got to give him $30+ million a year on the new contract. That's the bigger obstacle there. The Bears should not give up a 1st round pick right now for a pass rusher. You need young, cheap talent, not 30+ year old expensive talent with those draft picks, and they don't have the salary cap space right now. They could create the salary cap space, but you're really mortgaging your future flexibility to sign free agents this offseason, to sign potentially Jaquan Brisker to a contract extension, to sign any of your upcoming free agents to contract extensions. I'm struggling with names off the top of my head, but guys that are coming up, or if you end up wanting to move on from DeAndre Swift and bring in a new running back, or you want to move on from your linebackers and replace them, or you want to get another cornerback in there, you need salary cap space for those guys, and a lot of that would go to Hendrickson if you were to trade for him. A couple other names that I think are going to cost a lot in terms of salary and draft picks that are a little younger, so I'm more intrigued, but not necessarily confident Ryan Poles is going to pull the trigger. A lot of talk about Kayvon Thibodeau from the New York Giants. That one I think I would be most on board with here just because of how young he is and how consistent he has been. But he too has had some injuries. And again, I'm not giving up 1st round pick for Kayvon Thibodeau because you got to trade for him and then give him a new contract extension. But he's a good scheme fit in terms of being one of these bigger defensive ends. We've seen him be a quality 1st round talent. He's still 24, about to turn 25 years old. I think he's somebody that you could feel good about him developing in the long term. But even there, if I'm giving up a high draft pick, I don't want another Montez Sweat who is a good player, but maybe not a great player. Like if I'm giving up a high draft pick, I want that to be a great player. And I'm not outside of Trey. Hendrickson's probably the only one there, but he's older and really expensive. So then it's like, well, you're stuck between a rock and a hard place. Like I'd hate to see the Bears go up and give, a third or even a second round pick for someone like Jermaine Johnson from the New York Jets, who again, like young upside for sure, but like his best season was 2023. He had 7.5 sacks, was injured last season. He had the one good Pro Bowl season and even his good season was only 7.5 sacks. So like, I'm not ready to like mortgage my whole pass rush future in Jermaine Johnson. There's a lot to like about Jermaine Johnson. And if I could get him for a, 5th round, I mean, that's probably not realistic, but that kind of thing. If the draft pick is a lot lower, I'm much more willing to say, hey, I'll take a chance on a young guy, because then even if he doesn't turn out to be a great player, if he could just be a good player, well, I'd give up a 4th or 5th round pick for a good player that doesn't have to be a great player. And he's young and ascending and maybe can still get even better. Or, you can kind of throw, I guess Bradley Chubb's a little bit on the older side. He's the other one that everyone's looking for from the Miami Dolphins. They gave up draft picks to get him from the Broncos a couple seasons ago. And he had, 11 sacks his first year, but then tore his ACL last year. Been playing back and playing better this season, but he's 29, turns 30 next offseason. So he's, again, like trending towards this older side, but you feel like, could he be a higher impact player? He's a guy we've seen hit double-digit sacks multiple times in his career, and we've seen him now bounce back from the injury. Like, I think he would make some sense there. I'm just not sure that the Dolphins are in position to trade like both of their starting edge rushers. I guess they have Chop Robinson and Matthew Judon. Like they have depth at that position, but I'm not sure that they're gonna want a good ROI on Bradley Chubb. If they gave up a 2nd round pick to get him, like they're probably gonna be looking for something similar at this point. So am I giving up a 3rd round pick for Bradley Chubb at this stage of the process? Like you got to do something. So I'm not saying never, like it would be some horrible move for the team, but he too is $31 million on the salary cap next year, and then $31 million in salary cap the following season. Like that's a lot of money to invest in a guy. And unless I'm certain he's going to be a 10+ sack guy, game-changing playmaker, I'm not sure I'm giving up draft pick and salary for somebody like him. But I do think there are a few guys that are a little bit more affordable and a little bit more, a better fit in terms of like price and value, where like maybe it's not going to solve your Bears pass rushing problem, but it can at least fill the hole of Dayo Odeyingbo and get you through, at least through this season. And maybe they stick around as part of the rotation in the future, but not necessarily your long-term pass rush solved option. So we'll take a look at the ones that might be a little bit of a better fit from a compensation and just sort of a team structure standpoint next on Locked On Bears. The Locked On Bears podcast is brought to you by FanDuel Sportsbook. We're all enjoying the NFL season right now, but the NBA is back now too, and there's no better place to get in on the action than FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. Because even if you missed the start of the game or you want to ride the hot hand, FanDuel has live bets on everything from who will score next to fourth quarter comebacks. Plus, you can even combine your live bets into a same-game parlay for a shot at a bigger payout. It keeps every game exciting, especially when your team is the one making that late push. Right now, FanDuel is giving new customers $300 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. So head to FanDuel.com to sign up and play your game with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. So maybe the big splash, expensive high draft pick trade is a little much right now for where the Bears are, but I still think upgrades are available that should be more affordable. And I think it's worth making clear that, like, given the Dayo Odeyingbo injury and the massive hole that sits right there on the depth chart in the starting lineup, almost, I don't want to say almost anyone, right? But like, you'd be hard pressed to find a trade that isn't an upgrade. Like a player from another team who is playing should be an upgrade over Dominique Robinson and Austin Booker, just from a consistency standpoint. Like, obviously you can find examples that wouldn't be upgrades, but like pretty much any trade market player, any player that has real trade value is going to be an upgrade over Dominique Robinson and Austin Booker, who certainly Robinson doesn't have any real trade value, and Booker probably has some as a ascending young player, but you get the point here, right? Like, teams want these guys for a reason because they're better than what the Bears have. Like, one name I've seen thrown out there a bit is Cam Jordan from the New Orleans Saints because of the obvious Dennis Allen connection here. Cam Jordan is 36 years old. And so I can see where if you're Cam Jordan, do you want to finish the end of your career on a bad New Orleans Saints team, or would you rather reunite with your coach who was with you for a decade in New Orleans when you were making Pro Bowls and play for a Bears team that will at least give you a shot at the playoffs? Like, sure, the Bears probably aren't a Super Bowl contender, but I could see Cam Jordan saying, hey, I'll try it out over there. I think from a Bears perspective, are you going to give up, how much of a draft pick are you going to give up for a 36-year-old defensive lineman who is technically in the last year of his deal? So he's got void years added onto his contract. It's probably not worth getting into details, but he renegotiated and pushed some of the money down the line because the Saints always do that. That makes the trade a little bit tricky because the Saints would take on a bunch of dead money if they trade him, so the Bears have to give up some cap space. I think the logistics there make Cam Jordan too difficult, and I think from a Bears perspective, trading for a 36-year-old edge rusher right now, you're not giving up much of anything just for half a season of Cam Jordan. So I think if I'm the Bears, I'm trying to get Carl Granderson from the Saints. I'm not sure they will be as willing to move on from a 28-year-old defensive end who's been a pretty consistent, 5 to 8 sack guy for them. But he feels to me like the ideal filling the void of Dayo Odeyingbo, where he's not going to be your number one pass rusher. He's not going to come in and fix your pass rush, but can be a solid running mate to Montez Sweat. Has been a dependable, healthy player. He's only missed like 2 games in any individual season over the course of his career, and again has the Dennis Allen known familiarity there. This year he's only costing you $6 million. He's on a cheaper contract right now. He signed an extension a couple years ago that's going to kick in next year. He's going to cost you $18 million, which is still only what you're paying Dayo Odeyingbo anyway. So it's not like he's going to totally break the bank, but it is a lot of money to have invested in that as he's going to turn 30 years old. But he feels like to me like a guy who you can trade for. He can be your starter right now, but he's not going to stop you from using your first round pick next year in the draft on an edge rusher. And then, he can be kind of a bridge to the long-term future there. Or if Austin Booker continues to develop, he can kind of be that bridge. I think somebody like Granderson would make a lot of sense. I'm just not sure that the Saints are going to be that willing to part with him, because if you let go of him, then you've got Cameron Jordan is 36 years old, and they've got Chase Young, I guess, but like they don't necessarily have he's probably more part of their longer term plans, and Cam Jordan's the one who's not, but they might just want to keep Cam Jordan around so he can play his whole career with the Saints. So it's easy to just make the Saints-Bears connection there and pull the trigger, but it's a lot easier to do on paper and on a podcast than in reality. There's been more rumblings that the Patriots are willing to move on from more players. We've already seen them trade a couple of guys. And one name that's out there is Anthony Jennings, their edge rusher, more of an outside linebacker, but he's over 250 pounds. Like, I think he can bulk up for and hold the edge in a 4-3 defensive end position for the Bears. And we've seen him be a starter for them. Now, I think the red flag that pops up right away, 2.5 sacks is his career high last season. I'm not trading for Anthony Jennings to come in and again, solve the Bears pass rush, but I think he's a solid option, a player who he generates pressure at a decent rate. He doesn't have the big plays, the big sacks, but he gets pressure on the quarterback. He's not a game changer. That's fine. I don't need a game changer. I need a starter who can fill in opposite Montez Sweat because I just have a big hole there. Like, if I could give up a 6th-round pick for I can never say his name, Anthony Jennings, I'm feeling pretty good about just plugging a significant hole there. He's got one more year on his deal, costs $5 million. Like, ideally he's your number 3, but in an emergency where the Bears are right now, he could be a nice cheap alternative option there. I've seen people throw out Matthew Judon from the Dolphins. The Bears had all offseason to sign Judon if they wanted him. They didn't. He's a little light for Dennis Allen's scheme, so I don't think he's necessarily a great fit. But the other top name I would keep an eye on is Arden Key from the Tennessee Titans, because he's in this sweet spot type of range too, where he's 29, still in the prime of his career. Again, we're not talking game changers. These are going to be more reasonable acquisitions here. He's not crazy expensive. I think he is in the last year of his contract though at about $9 million. He's been it was a 5-6 sack a year type of guy. And if you could get him for a 6th round pick, absolutely sign me up. I think just give me a pass rusher that's better than what they have right now. More experienced, more consistent, a little bit more proven than Austin Booker and Dominic Robinson, because this is a real problem as it stands right now. I guess you could turn to free agency. Your options are not any better. DeMarcus Walker, former Chicago Bear, still sitting out there. Hey, old buddy, we're a little desperate now. At the end of the night, the lights are on in the bar, and you look around, and it's your ex, DeMarcus Walker, sitting there, and it's like, well, all right, like better than nothing, I guess. Big body, seems like he could be a scheme fit. I'd certainly kick the tires there. Or like Shaq Barrett, the former Tampa Bay Buccaneer, still sitting out there. I feel like there's more to that story, because I would think someone who has had a 19.5 sack season 6 years ago, but has had multiple 10 sack seasons, like would at least be on a roster right now after being a starter for Tampa for a little while. So I'm certainly got to kick the tires there and kind of see what's up. But if you're taking a flyer on a 32-year-old veteran free agent just to come in and get you through the end of the year, I don't see why either of those guys would be off the table at this point if everything else clears out. So like the Bears have options. They are not all sexy options. There's not very many sexy options, but I don't think they're in a spot to do the big splash sexy option. They're in hey, we need something. We need a body that has some production in here. And it can't just be promoting Jamry Chroma off of your practice squad. Like this is no longer something they can just fill from within. I guess they also added Jonathan Garvin, the former Packers 7th round pick, to the practice squad. But again, like these are guys who have not played meaningful regular season NFL snaps. You need an infusion here because the pass rush wasn't good enough with Dayo Odeyingbo. Sure as heck is going to be horrible without Dayo Odeyingbo. And as much as I like Austin Booker, he's not that guy. He hasn't proven to be that consistent yet. I think we will see more Austin Booker. I think we will see improved Austin Booker. I'm not sure that my plan A is hand the kid the key to the cars before we've seen him pass his driver's test. That's kind of where I'm at with Austin Booker. He's really good at the racing video games, and seems to know his stuff. And we've seen flashes of it, right? But like, let's treat this like a real problem and not just a very, very light Band-Aid on this flesh wound that's happened on the defensive line here. Certainly hoping for the best for Dayo Odeyingbo's recovery as well. But whatever happens at the trade deadline, if there's a big move, Joe George is going to break it down for you on tomorrow's Locked On Bears podcast, filling in for me this Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and then Monday and Tuesday as well. I will be back for next Wednesday's podcast, a week from tomorrow. I'm going to be out of the country, taking some much needed time off and then seeing the world a little bit here and there. It's kind of a special trip with some friends. Anyway, I'll miss you. I hope you don't miss me too much in that process, because Joe will take good care of you. But, I'll be back before too long. So that's why you got to hit the subscribe button on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts. That's going to be the best way to keep up with all of our daily in-depth Chicago Bears news and analysis. Thanks for making Locked On Bears your first listen today. Keep making it your first listen, even when Joe is filling in for me. If you're looking for a second listen, be sure to check out Locked On NFL for all the trade deadline coverage you need. I co-hosted this morning's Locked On NFL with Tyler Rowland. We talked about the Monday night game between the Cardinals and the Cowboys. Not a great game overall, but two teams that could be involved in the trade deadline. Then we looked at the deals for Dre'Mont Jones and the other one that we talked about, Jalen Phillips. And we also looked at who else could be buyers at the deadline. The Steelers and the Patriots in particular are in position to go all in and make some big moves. So more football talk over at Locked On NFL. Coming back tomorrow for more Bears talk on Locked On Bears and another opportunity for you to bear down.